All right. So, good evening, everyone. We are so excited to have you all here this evening for our third monthly youth webinar. Before we continue, could I ask if you haven't already, please mute your microphone for right now. No need to worry or stress. We will have some open discussion later on during our question and answer period. For those who don't know me, my name's Waverly Gadet, and I'm the communications coordinator here at KMK. A little bit about me is I came on to KMK as a student and have been here ever since. For about 4 years now, I've worked on many files, but primarily I work on youth and communications, and I'm also from Glooscap First Nation. So I want to welcome everyone and thank all the youth for joining us this evening. These webinars are solely for you and based on the youth's interests. Throughout this journey, we will dive into our different departments here at KMK, along with other subjects heard youth are interested in. This journey will be filled with learning, fun, and opportunities for you as a youth. In saying that, our subject for this evening is energy. This leads me to introduce our speaker for this evening, Patrick Butler, the Senior Mi'kmaq Energy and Mines Advisor here at KMK. So I'll pass it along to Patrick to introduce himself and start this discussion.
No, thank you very much, Waverly. As Wave said, my name is Patrick Butler. I'm the Senior Energy and Mines Advisor here at Gwillimut Maguswan Negotiation Office. My role as the Energy and Mines Advisor is to oversee the energy and mining projects happening across Nova Scotia and advise the federal and provincial governments how certain energy and mining projects may impact the Mi'kmaq Section 35 rights. So as we've said, tonight I'll be focusing on the energy side of my portfolio. And also just wanted to give a big thank you to Waverly, Crystal Dory, as well as all of our communications team. They do a great job of getting this information out there, organizing the sessions, and just letting community members know what's going on. So really appreciate Waverly and Crystal's help in organizing this. And I do have a little presentation, so I can just bring that up and I will share my screen. Wave, I'll just check with you. Is that presentation working for you right now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Great. Great. So as I said previously, my name is Patrick Butler. I am from Blidlidek First Nation. I was originally in Eskazoni, but I've transferred to be closer to where I was from in St. Peters, Nova Scotia. That's where I currently reside. I joined KMK in August of 2020, initially as a fishery support officer, reviewing Fishery Act authorizations, as well as any projects that generally involved water. Then in February of 2021, I joined the energy and mining portfolio. I had a bit of a different journey to my time here at KMK. I went to school initially for electrical construction and industrial. I graduated with honors from the Nautical campus in Port Hawkesbury. This was a really great foundation for my future career. I know it's a little bit different. You know, I didn't really go to university, so I found community college was much more suited to me and just my needs and my learning. I was very hands-on growing up, so really enjoyed that program. It provided a great foundation, learning about electrical systems, residential wiring, industrial electronics within power plants, and a really just good foundation moving forward. Also, I took class 3 truck driving as part of my training as well. This was a really cool opportunity through METI and gave us the opportunity to drive around trucks and the dump trucks and the milk trucks that you'll see driving around, anything with a single axle. So was really grateful for both experiences. They really helped build my confidence and build my skill sets because I was kind of outside my realm in this. Previous to joining KMK, I worked for my community of Blidlidek First Nation as a fishery guardian technician. This was a wonderful opportunity working in community. We would distribute various tags, such as for FSC, for lobster, and for salmon. as well as taking care of the vessels and the fleets in the community, looking after the boats. Following that, I joined Sustainable Marine Energy. This is an in-stream tidal energy developer that was down in Grand Passage towards Briar Island on the Digby Neck. Another really cool opportunity, very remote. We had to take 2 ferries to actually get to our work site. So it doesn't get too much more isolated than that in Nova Scotia. But really cool experience. I've got a picture of me on the actual tidal platform, and I'll get a little bit more into that project later on in my presentation. But this was in the middle of January, and we had to scrape ice off the platform to let our boat tie up. So it's a bit of an action shot of me on the platform and all of our PPE. And definitely a colder day down in Grand Passage for sure. So yeah, following that, I joined KMK, like I said, and have been here ever since. Over 4 years now. It's really flown by and really crazy to see how much time passes so quickly. Also, just wanted to highlight another picture of myself down on the Tidal Energy platform in Grand Passage. As well, I want to acknowledge the Catalyst program through Indigenous Clean Energy. This is a very technical program I took last summer. I shouldn't say last summer, but throughout the spring into summer. And this provided 3 on-week site visits, and we got to go view different energy projects that were owned by First Nations. We were out in Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan. We got to view a massive solar farm. It was kilometers of solar panels, as well as different wind projects that the nation owned. And really cool just to see what different Indigenous communities can do when they have the resources and capacity to enter the renewable energy sector. I think there's it's been a huge boost lately of the economy to really push for these electrical projects to proceed, such as onshore wind, offshore wind, solar, green hydrogen. So we're definitely seeing the transition to net zero and away from fossil fuels, which is going to be really important and will just be beneficial to our Mother Earth across Turtle Island. So just starting very high level, talking about the different types of renewable energy, or the types of energy rather. First, we have renewable. We can always make more of this type of energy and the resource will not run out. So such as solar from the sun, there's always going to be the sun there. Wind energy from the wind to make those turbines turn. The wind's always going to be there, as well as tidal energy and hydro dams, which the water and that resource will always be there. This is compared to non-renewables, where there's a limited and finite amount of this resource. So, for example, there's only so much coal, oil, natural gases such as butane and methane across our Earth and across our planet. So there isn't an unlimited amount of these resources. So our provincial and federal governments have really set targets towards net zero and to get us off of all of the coal and oil that we're currently burning in the province and across Turtle Island. These types of energy, both renewable and non-renewable, feed into the Nova Scotia power grid, and we as consumers purchase this power from Nova Scotia Power. And I'll get a little bit more into that. I just took this graphic from Nova Scotia Power. I think this provides a very high level and very detailed description and visual of different energy sources that could work together and different just technologies that have really progressed. You know, in the last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution, we've seen huge strides in our technology and how we view power, how we use power every day, and I'll be getting more into that. But I thought this was just a really cool visual representation. So for example, like if I look at the wind turbines here, the wind turbine power will feed into a generating station or a substation they call, which feeds into the transmission lines, which then feeds into the grid, where Nova Scotia Power then resupplies us as consumers this power. Also just highlighting some different opportunities that have really change the electrical sector. You know, there's a lot of electric vehicles, charging stations in communities these days. We see a lot of solar panels to offset the cost of power in communities. And, you know, there's some fully electrified buildings out there that run strictly on renewables. You know, it's right now, and I'll get into this a bit, but our primary power use or power source in Nova Scotia is coal. So we really need to get off coal, get off that reliance on fossil fuels, and look towards a greener future because we only have one Earth and we need to take care of her. So as the Energy and Mines Advisor, I consult with the federal and provincial governments along with our consultation team. We've built a great team over the years. We've got well over, I think, about a dozen workers in that department in particular. So we work with different regulators such as Natural Resources and Renewables, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Environment and Climate Change. And as the Energy and Mines Advisor, I advise on the energy projects that could impact the Mi'kmaq Section 35 rights. This includes access to hunting areas where community members may harvest moose, if there's impacts to fishing, such as potential impacts to rights-based fisheries, commercial fisheries. We generally try to advise the Crown or the federal and provincial governments how these sectors could impact the Mi'kmaq. So the 5 main sectors I've personally consulted on since joining the team 4 years ago would be wind energy, solar energy, in-stream tidal, offshore wind, which includes floating and fixed turbines, as well as the emerging green hydrogen sector. So I've spoken a bit about each of these, but if I wanted to break them down more, wind energy, it's all those windmills you see driving along the side of the highways in areas that have really good wind potential. Solar energy, you know, it's those solar panels that you'll see sometimes outside of community buildings, on rooftops, different locations depending on the community needs. This, as solar energy, they take solar from the sun, that powers the solar panel, that feeds into the grid to usually offset the power consumption of that building. In-stream tidal energy, this is essentially like when there's a wind turbine that's below water, that rotation generates energy, and I'll get a bit more into that later. And that provides power into the grid as Nova Scotia Power distributes it. Offshore wind's been a really exciting sector I've done a lot of work on, such as through the regional assessment, as well as working with some early stage proponents who are looking at Nova Scotia because we have a lot of potential here. It's very windy offshore, it's very windy onshore, and just our location as a province, we're very suited to provide either domestically, internationally, we're really well suited to provide that source of power to other jurisdictions. And then the emerging green hydrogen section. This is a really interesting technology, mostly used internationally and across Europe. This is essentially where they take water, they go through a process called electrolysis, where they separate the hydrogen and the oxygen atoms, isolate the hydrogen, turn that into green ammonia, and then the plan will be to export that to international sources as needed. So really, really fun, really exciting times in the energy sector. We're seeing a lot of new technologies. There's a lot of different proponents internationally that are eyeing up Nova Scotia just based on our potential. And it's really exciting times, you know, we've got to make some changes here. You know, there's really big commitments from the federal and provincial governments to get off these fossil fuels. So we will need renewables as we develop those net zero plans. Just a question I'd like to pose to the audience. Which of these 2 of 5 that we currently consult on supply power to the grid? And the answer would be wind and solar. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of activity yet in those other sectors. Offshore wind is still several years out in terms of development. In-stream tidal generally starts as these demonstration projects where they have to prove their technology. And green hydrogen is very much in its infancy stages at this point. There are two plants, which I'll get into in a bit, in Cape Breton, the Bearhead project, as well as the Everwind Fuels project. These are going to be green hydrogen and ammonia production facilities. And the goal from them is to export this product into an international market. So as you can see by this graphic, I believe I took from Nova Scotia Power, 55% of our power currently comes from coal and coke resources. So that's like the coal mining, like that black substance. That's what we burn currently, 55% of our power in Nova Scotia. We've really got to get that number down to meet the power requirement needs for the residents of Nova Scotia. So we've really got to bulk up those wind, those biomasses, those other emerging technologies that can get us off this coal generated stations. There's so many innovative technologies internationally, and I would love to see Nova Scotia look more at the international markets and see what else we could do here. Because again, like it's scary times with global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, with rising sea levels. There's definitely we're on a clock, I'll say, to get us off these on these finite resources where there's not an infinite amount of. So a challenge I would like to pose to the audience here today and any of the youth watching is, could you go without electricity for a full day? You know, right now I currently have my lights on, I've got my computer, I've got my monitor, I've got my internet hooked up, I've got my PlayStation on in the background. All of these things really take power and draw consumption from Nova Scotia Power. Like if you look at some of the biggest draws, that would be your refrigerator, your stove, your hot water tank. These big bulky machines that we have in our house, they really do consume a lot of power. And I think it would be a great challenge to see how could you go without power? Like, you know, that means no cell phones, no appliances, no internet. Could you do it? I don't know if I could. I'd love to see the youth try it. So, you know, it's crazy to think about when you start looking at your day-to-day life. Like, what do I actually use power for? There's quite a bit. And it's hard to get off that, I'll say. Like it's we really do rely on it for cooking, for cleaning, for working. You know, there's so many applications of power that we don't really think of. So I'd love to put a challenge out there to the youth to see how could they go without power for one day. Let's maybe stop there if there's any questions from the audience. Anything else, Waverly, that might come up?
I don't see any questions right now, but we can continue and see if there's any at the end.
Good stuff. Thank you.
No worries.
So I just wanted to provide a bit of a map of some of the current energy projects that KMK currently consults on. So we've got three in-stream tidal energy devices or sites, I'll say. We've got the Fundy Ocean Research Center for Energy, or FORCE, over in Parsboro. This is a demonstration site that allows different in-stream tidal developers to come prove their technology, use the resources there at FORCE, and just see some of the strongest currents in the world. I believe the flow at that site is 5 meters per second. So you think of 5 meter sticks going in 1 second. That's the flow and potential of the FORCE site. We have some of the biggest tides in the world. It's world class, and it's some of the developers have had a struggle trying to harness that power. There's a lot of potential there, but there's also a lot of unknowns and challenges. Also, sustainable marine energy is way down here on the Digby Neck. This is where I previously worked for 2 years on the demonstration device. This was a really cool project. I'll get into it a bit more later, but it was a floating platform right in the middle of two islands where there was heavy flow coming through. I believe the flow there was 3 meters per second, so not quite as aggressive as FORCE, but definitely lots of potential for energy. You can also see Nova Innovation. They have a proposed project in Petite Passage, is the passage here in between the two other islands. This will be a different technology from SME, and I'll get into that a bit later. but it's amazing to see the different technologies available for people trying to harvest the tides. I've also highlighted the two green hydrogen projects here at the Strait of Canso in Cape Breton. This would be Everwind Fuels. They purchased this site from Point Tupper, as well as Bearhead Energy, who are proposing a new facility. Then across, I've highlighted some of the projects that have come across my desk in the last number of years. I've worked at KMK. We've got Port Hawkesbury Paper Wind, the Weavers Mountain Wind, Gundamuk Wind Project, Mersey River Wind Farm, Wedgeport Wind. There's so many of them. It's tough to keep up sometimes with all of the energy projects coming our way. But you know, we do need them. We need to get off these fossil fuels and the coal and coke fuel sources that we currently have. And I'd just like to highlight that a lot of these projects have Mi'kmaq partners, whether that's multiple communities gathering for a project, if it's through WMA, the Mi'kmaq's corporate entity that represents all 13 bands, or just proponents looking to engage with the Mi'kmaq and look for economic opportunities. I think it's great to see. We've really seen different proponents step up in different ways, and it's fantastic to have them included with the Mi'kmaq at an equity stake and owning part of the project, and having the Mi'kmaq really be in the driver's seat. It's really impressive to see the changes I've seen since joining KMK. Just giving a few examples about different wind projects. So the Mersey River Wind Farm down in the South Shore is a 33 turbine, 148.5 megawatt project. And I get asked a lot, like, what is a megawatt? So a megawatt is a unit of power that measures energy conversion or energy transfer per second. And I guess like in layman's terms, so this would be the equivalent of 1.2 months of electricity for an average North American home, 3,600 miles driven by an electric car, 2 refrigerators running for a full year, 2 60-watt light bulbs running continuously for a year. So it's really impressive. Like that's 1 megawatt for each of those. So you can imagine how much 150, let's say, megawatt turbine would produce. So again, just highlighting a couple of different projects here. You know, I believe the Benjamin Mills and the Wedgeport farms in particular have a Mi'kmaq ownership component to them. So, you know, it's great to see the Mi'kmaq really being in the driver's seat as we transition net zero. I also just posted on my presentation for anyone, if they are looking for more information about the lists of projects approved, they can go to Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change's website, where they can view the EAs. So you can review the documents that show the wind potential, that they'll show the impacts to the flora and fauna in the area, the habitat for the animals, if there's mainland moose, if there's going to be impact to the Mi'kmaq Section 35 rights. So, and it's not just wind projects on this site. There's a lot of quarries, pits, mining, bridges, highways, all sorts of different activities happening across the province. So I do have an activity for those online. So my challenge to you would be to spin your arms like a wind turbine and generate kinetic energy. So I'll lead by example. I'll go. So if you're doing this, that generates kinetic energy with the wind turbine. So I'd love to see some of the participants tonight do that. And I think with kinetic energy, you're using the air in motion to turn that into electricity. Then in more modern turbines, the wind rotates the rotor blades, which then converts kinetic energy into rotational energy. This gets fed into the grid that really supplies our power to turn on our lights, to use our gaming systems, whatever you're using that energy for. Just wanted to provide a couple visuals. This is the next version of the tidal energy platform I worked on in Grand Passage. This platform consists of 6 turbines that produce 70 kilowatts of power each. So that's much less than those megawatts we were talking with the onshore wind. So this is going to be it's a lot of potential. It's a lot of opportunity, a lot of challenges, but it was a great experience to work on. I love working on the water every day, getting out to the platform. We would do everything from changing the blades that would be on these turbines to fixing the mooring system, the anchoring system that needed to be done. We had a really cool vessel. We called it Smeagol for after Lord of the Rings. It was SME in caps and then Eagle to kind of get that Lord of the Rings reference. But really cool opportunity. We had to do a lot of environmental monitoring for our authorization from Department of Fisheries. This included looking for whales in the area, keeping lines open with the Coast Guard, working with the whale watchers to know when a whale might be coming through. Especially down on the South Shore, it's such a busy passage for a lot of animals migrating. So we really had to make sure we do our due diligence. We had cameras on our turbines to look to see if we had fish strikes, which thankfully we never did during my time. And yeah, it was so many different monitoring methods that were associated with a project like this. We had a hydrophone that was just below the water, and that would record all the sound in the area. So, you know, if we hear dolphins clicking, we put that in our report and send that to the regulator. And yeah, I think it was a really cool experience. Very grateful for it. I learned so much boots on the ground experience. You know, we spent weeks down in Grand Passage at times troubleshooting this thing and getting it up and running, especially where it's a demonstration device. We're trying to prove that it's commercially ready to supply power to the Nova Scotia Power Grid. Just to differentiate a bit, here's Nova Innovations proposed project. So while Sustainable Marine on the right here, the red, that was a floating platform. The bottom mounted is on the seabed floor. And there's perks and challenges with each one. You know, with the floating platform, we're able to go on it, we're able to do the maintenance, we're able to see our substation, view how much power we're consuming or producing rather. Whereas Nova Innovation, you don't see this turbine, it's on the seabed floor. But then you also have to have more cost budgeted for diving operations to hire divers to go into the water during the slack tides and fix up whatever's wrong at the time. So really two different technologies, but the same industry. So essentially, I like to think of these as like wind turbines in the water. It's kind of that same kinetic energy. It's still that spinning piece. And yeah, just I'd love to see this more streamlined here in Nova Scotia. There's a lot of in-stream tidal energy over in Europe, where Sustainable Marine Energy originated from. But again, there's so much potential here. A lot of developers look at Nova Scotia as potential. So yeah, really great to see these different technologies come into play and see how they're developed. Oh, oh shoot. You can see this wave?
Yep, you're good.
Good stuff. Sorry about that. Another project I'd like to highlight is the Mi'kmaq Home Energy Efficiency Program. This was a program launched in 2018 in partnership with Efficiency Nova Scotia. So this program offers no-cost upgrades to different community members within the Mi'kmaq to improve their quality of living. This would include wrapping hot water tanks, stuffing attics and drafty areas. And a lot of the times, the assessment that Efficiency Nova Scotia would do is installing heat pumps. So if any of you community members recently seen, I think Al Gould Construction from Muscazone coming into your home and doing some of these upgrades, that's this is through the program. So all of these are free of charge, discussed with community members and housing managers ahead of time. And just a really good program to help reduce the power that each home is consuming. So like if you're getting a heat pump put in, then maybe you don't need those fossil fuels and that oil that you might be burning, or if you burn wood, you know, you're able to rely a bit more on the grid and not use those limited resources that we have. You know, right now we use so many non-renewable resources. It's alarming as we look to the future. So I just put the link to the website if anyone online is interested. You can learn more about the program, see if you're eligible, if maybe your parents or your caregivers are. And it's just it's a great way to see how much power you're consuming within your house. That's it for the formal presentation. I'd like to thank you for your time, Lalio. If any community members, youth, elders, knowledge keepers would like to learn more, I provided a very high level overview today, and I think we'll be getting into Nova Scotia Power next month. But if anyone's currently interested in some of the solar projects, the green hydrogen, the tidal, the wind, my door is always open. My email is pbutler@mi'kma'rights.com. You can also find my contact details on KMK's website. Always happy to chat about opportunities, challenges communities face. If you know of a project that might be of alarm that I have mentioned today, feel free to reach out. My door is always open.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Patrick, for that awesome presentation. We'll go into question and answer period, but I'll stop recording for that so we can get a little more personable, I suppose.
Great. Thank you, Waverly.
No problem.